Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of the Real Music Show. My name is Daniel Roe and I'm the founder of Real Music and the host of the Real Music Show. At Real Music, we bring you closer to the artists and creators you love, along with some exclusive live performances. Today I'm joined by my good friend Alex Riley.
Hey Dan, how's it going?
Not too bad, how are you, Alex?
Yeah, feeling good. I'm glad we finally got this arranged.
Good, yeah, no, it's been a bit of to and fro. I was worried I had coronavirus, but luckily it came back as negative, so that's all good. So we're here today, and I've been looking forward to this chat for a while.
Yeah.
I think we're going to go in a few different directions, and make sure you stick around because we've got a live DJ set from Alex later on today. Really looking forward to that, so it's going to be really good. So yeah, let's have a chat and see where it takes us. So Alex, could you tell the viewers a little bit more about yourself and your musical background?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'm mainly a DJ producer, the alias being Ratti, but also I've just started a project with my housemate, which is called Bavag, so there'll be kind of news on that soon. But yeah, I've been kind of working in events, mainly throwing sort of raves and stuff for the last like 5 years, DJing at those, and kind of, I guess, got started on producing this year, kind of using that lockdown time to learn a bit more about Ableton and actually try and like make some music for my mixes. Okay,
cool. So how did you get into that scene then?
Really, it started, I guess, coming to Bristol. We've got an awesome underground scene here, and I think going to places like the Black Swan and Lakota, hearing things like Jungle for the first time. I think Jungle was the first time that I realised that I really loved, especially like electronic music and dance music, which it feels weird to call it that because it's not.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't really feel like it's electronic music to me. I mean, I guess Jungle, then into, I guess, sort of like house stuff and drum and bass came shortly after, and then moving to Falmouth, which is weird. You wouldn't have thought that would be the place that I'd get more invested in things like jungle and drum and bass, but as it happened, there were some really good people down there throwing some great events, and I kind of just got swept into it as a videographer, then became a promoter, and then just kind of kept doing it really.
That's interesting. Do you think if you didn't go to Falmouth, you would still got into it in the same way, or do you think that was a huge influence?
I definitely wouldn't have got into it the same way.
Yeah.
I think running events in Bristol, though I haven't really had the chance to do much yet, it definitely seems like a bigger challenge. The city is different here. Falmouth is a much smaller place with, I guess, less clubs and like dedicated venues, but kind of encourages that sort of like DIY spirit and stuff. So I think there's certainly a lot of crossover between what we were doing with DJs and what the DIY punk scene was doing down there and has been doing for some time in terms of promoting our own events, getting people to come, putting like local support on and stuff like that. So I guess it was different in that way, but yeah, I don't really know what to say. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess at the moment with COVID, it's quite difficult for people in that scene. What sort of things are you doing to keep yourself engaged with music and to keep yourself busy at the moment?
Well, I haven't stopped listening to music. Anything has changed. If anything, I've bought more music, especially vinyl and stuff, and mixing at home has really got me through I guess the tough parts of the lockdown period. It's never going to be the same. It's never going to be the same as playing a night, and as much as I'm totally bookable for a sit down rave, please do. But I really miss being in just a sweaty basement with my friends really, and that's another thing that was different about Falmouth. I knew everyone there, from the Cornish crew, the Kerno crew, to the Bristol crew that were down there, and other people as well coming from all over places. You'd look out on the dance and you'd see everyone. So I'm missing that, but collecting music. Obviously there's been things like Bandcamp Day and stuff, which I think has been a really, really good move for a lot of artists, just in the same way, working from home, trying to keep creative and stuff. I suppose that I haven't been able to be as creative as I usually am, not running events. That's kind of like a big overall creative process, so it's been more yeah, getting into production has really filled the hole as well. You know, we've got a studio here, like a small studio, and
See,
you know,
it's nice.
yeah. Which is, you know, my housemate Jack, who's a part of Earthnut, who are a really sick garage duo. If you haven't already heard of them, please go and check out their music. You know, kind of set it up, and that was one of the agreements for moving here. We both moved here from Falmouth, and we kind of said, you know, we need a studio in the house, and you know, for him to work, for him to do his releases. You know, he kind of has something coming out like once every month or so now. For me to practice, and also, you know, he's been showing me the ropes, and that kind of started this project that we've kind of got going together now as well.
Perfect. No, it's good. It's good you're making good use of that time. And it's weird in a way, like if you think sort of like 10, 20 years ago, it's much easier these days to have all that equipment at home and get into like producing at home, whereas like back in the day, like you just wouldn't be able to do that. So it definitely opens up that door to creativity, I think. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see like how we kind of move out of this sort of area. So I guess with COVID, like what are your thoughts on it in terms of how it's impacted the music scene, and how do you think we're going to get out of it, and what do you think's on the other side?
I think how we're going to get out of it is a hard question, really. I think, you know,
sure.
There's a lot of people, especially in, you know, in light of the comments from, you know, people in government saying that musicians should retrain and the events is unviable. You know, I don't think anyone took that lightly, and you will see the kind of anger in that coming
Backlash
from
all over Twitter.
Yeah, you know, people using social media again, as we've seen quite a lot this year, to kind of fight back and push back against that. But I think we're a united front, really. From DJs to musicians, it's nice to see everyone like in it together and talking about it. And obviously the people that work in events, and you know, a lot of the people behind the scenes that you don't see a lot, you know, now really threatened with their jobs and being unable to do stuff. It's a hard time for an industry full of really dedicated people, a lot of them freelance, a lot of them starting their own things like I've done in the past. And I think as a collective voice, you know, we're innovating. There's sit down things happening in Bristol, you know, shout outs to like the High Rise Hub. They've been, you know, smashing out great, you know, drum and bass nights, reggae nights, I think some garage nights and some dubstep nights as well, with the firmly rooted sound system. Shout outs to Jake. It's always sounding good, and it's nice to get in front of that sound system and even when you see people sat on the seats, you know, sort of doing gun fingers and skanking on their way to the toilet, you know, the energy's still there. And
there's definitely sort of thirst for live music and live sets. For sure. Yeah,
and I think there always will be. I mean, you know, we're in Bristol right now. Bristol is a city that breathes live music, from the clubs to the bigger gigs and stuff that happen. You know, there's a real appetite for this, and I don't think that's kind of age like related either. Like I think all you know, generations, whatever they're into in Bristol, have all got some, you know, music that they love. And I think when it comes back, the energy is going to be very strong. And I think moving forwards, you know, however we get back into it, it will happen again. You know, festivals will happen again, club nights will happen again, and you know, after that big break, I mean, I can't wait to throw down, you know, my first DJ set, you know, hopefully one in Bristol. It'll be an amazing energy, and you know, I've been stacking up the tunes and preparing for that set every day over lockdown. So there's going to be a lot of competition between the DJs of like, you know, who's going to play the killer sets and who's been, you know, who's been slacking and who's been still following the music.
I think it's the same for rock musicians as well. Like I know, like I'm more in like sort of the rock side of things, and I'm definitely missing playing gigs, being in front of people, and being a part of that scene. And it's the time for like musicians to just write, produce content, get it out there. And then when we go back to it, we just know we're going to go festivals full circle, gigs full circle. Like it's all going to be thriving. But it's just, when are we going to get to that point? I think that's what everyone's kind of worried about at this stage. And is it going to be like suddenly everything goes back to normal? I don't think we can do that. I think it's going to have to be very like gradual. But it's great that those sort of people are doing events already.
Yeah, sure. You can't tell some of them no. You know, like there's a real energy to keep things moving, and I think, you know, the uncertainty is hard. It's hard mentally as well.
Yes,
you know,
sure.
It's hard mentally to lose that experience of going to things, whatever it is. You know, a gig, a club night, whatever. That atmosphere, I think, is very the same. To feel like you're in, you know, that moment. you know, for me has been a lifeline mentally for the last couple of years. And you know, if you'd have told me a year ago that I wouldn't have gigs for like, you know, however many months it is, 7-8 months, like I'd have been like, I don't know if I can cope. But in some ways it's also, you know, kind of made me think about things to improve my mental health beyond just going to stuff. So that's been positive. You know, going to the gym, working out, making up for that time that I'm not walking around so much. And you know, I'm home working at the moment, so I don't get nearly as much outdoor time as I should. But you know, getting outdoors, you know, seeing friends, helping them with, you know, creative projects that they're doing, you know, being an active voice, even though you can't always see people in person. I think it's going to really strengthen our ties within, you know, the community, especially the music community, you know. And I think, you know, you've got to take care of yourself, you really, and don't be stressing out and about the uncertainty of things, or you know, putting, you know, worst thing, putting your music to one side, stopping the music, you know. I mean, what a shame that people would even consider doing that. I hope they don't. I hope people can get through it.
Yeah, and I really just think that for the government to come out and say that, and say like, you retrain somewhere else. I mean, I can see both sides to it. I think like, you know, if you're a business, you have to adapt to like everything else that happens. But at the same time, for musicians, that's their life, and it's like, yes, you can pivot and you can change how you do your music, but to say they should just retrain in another profession is just a bit of a mick take, really, I think.
Yeah, right. And you know, even temporarily, I mean, it really shows like that they're not. But I really think it's a lack of them really understanding what a live music experience is. You know, I'm sure you put Michael Gove in the rave, he'd love it. Yeah. You know, but you know, a lot of these people, they're different. They haven't grown up going to live music and stuff, and they don't have that sympathy or that empathy there. And I think that's a shame. Whereas like most of us have been expected to take care of one another, that they're still kind of like, you know, putting out things like that. As I say, like there's people struggling quite hard at the moment, especially musicians, and I think that's the thing as well. Like, you know, for an orchestra or even a band, you know, when bands couldn't practice and stuff, like that was really, really difficult. Yeah. Tell people then to retrain. I mean, it's just a really, it's a really insensitive. You know, I could say a lot. I'm holding back. Like I could say a lot of things, but I don't think we all know that isn't right. You know, we all know, and we're not going to stop, and we're going to keep going. We're going to keep amplifying our voice, and you know, making our industry heard. You know, and that goes for all of us, really.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to go back a little bit, Alex. So can you talk to us a little bit about like your upbringing, like where you grew up, where you went to school, any sort of things that influenced you early on, and yeah, a little bit more sort of about that, like sort of help our viewers understand a little bit more about your past.
I started kind of, you know, where you were at, you know, with rock music, and you know, growing up in school was in bands, out of bands. I started playing bass, so you know, that love for like bass and like sub and stuff was there from early, you know, even before I started mixing like, you know, dubstep and stuff. But yeah, that kind of got me into the Bristol music scene while I was at school, going to gigs, playing places like, you know, the Croft, you know, rest in peace. I know it's Crofters' Rights now, but you know, there was an energy in that place that you know, really was awesome, especially when you saw like punk gigs and metal gigs. So I was going to lots of those, and then punk, kind of got into the punk scene and met some really cool people through that. Started listening to things like, wow, like Subhumans, Crass, you know, Gigi Allen, so many different like crazy types, you know, and that hard, aggressive, like political music. I think that played a big part in like my politics as well. And then I think I can only remember it as just some night I remember going in with the punks maybe to like Black Swan, and you know, there was people in their leathers and like, you know, their patches and stuff, but they were all getting down to, you know, music after the club, the gigs had finished. Yeah. You know, and that was jungle, and that was, you know, that was really where that started. So, you know, I owe it all to Bristol, really. I grew up in South Gloucestershire, you know, pretty far out, country boy, really. But obviously growing up with nothing around, you've got to like make things happen. So
I get that.
Rehearsing in a mate's garage led to wanting to rehearse in a studio in Bristol, wanting to play gigs in Bristol, and then, you know, even, you know, kind of went around going to Cornwall and stuff, and you know, it's very similar down there. You've got this like rural scene where like people are still trying to make stuff happen.
Yeah.
And then kind of came back around to Bristol, but I always knew that I'd end up back here, you know, for that reason really.
Yeah, it's interesting that you started in sort of like the rock music side. How do you think that has like influenced what you do now with like electronic music, and how you kind of mix and how you DJ?
I think there's always going to be a punk mentality to it, you know, in the way that I select, in the way that I, you know, sometimes the way I play sets depending on the energy, because there's a style to DJing as well. You know, you've got to really, you're there to do a service in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's only when you kind of get a name for people digging your stuff that you're able to kind of experiment. But I was always going hard and fast, and I think maybe that reminds me of the environment of like, you know, those big kicks and snares, like going to like like punk nights and hearing that coming out with your ears ringing. I definitely think that plays some. This inspired my selection in a lot of ways, but you know, also like reggae music and stuff. I know it's, you know, inseparable from things like jungle and dubstep and stuff, but also like, you know, growing up listening to that reggae sound, that had a massive impact on my music as well, you know, especially, you know, the sub bass and stuff like that, you know. Yeah, it's interesting to kind of think how, you know, I go in cycles of stuff, you know, hip hop as well. I've been into hip hop for like, you know, especially since I went to uni. I think as soon as I was on Spotify and kind of branched out a little bit with my music, I started listening to loads of, you know, sort of Pete Rock and Tribe Called Quest and Wu-Tang and Biggie and, you know, countless other, you know, hip hop artists, also modern hip hop, you know, like the Kendrick Lamar and, you know, Joey Badass and an Earl Sweatshirt. And, you know, music will always inspire you in different ways. But I think the sampling of hip hop, you know, the soul and the vibe of reggae, and the attitude and the angriness of punk, probably, like, I'd say, like my three major influences in music and what I like.
That makes a lot of sense. All of those elements are still there in what you do now. So it's interesting that you've always had that kind of like interest in music, and it's always been such a big influence on your life. But have you ever kind of thought about doing something other than music, or have you always known you're going to do music and nothing else?
I think starting off in music, I definitely judge myself against other people a lot.
Yeah, interesting. That's interesting.
And I think that led to me, you know, I actually went and studied film. So, you know, film and cinema is really like, it's as big a part of my life as music in some ways. And also, I guess, films that use music and sound in interesting ways, probably my favourite films, really. But yeah, I can't remember the question. Where did we go? We started talking about film, didn't we? Yeah, so I started off with film, and you know, film got me back into music. It was almost like trying to go a different path, or it led me in the same direction. You know, all my friends do music. Music is always at the heart of everything, and it was inescapable for me. You know, and I've always been listening to music, you know, even when I'm working, doing other stuff, even like, you know, putting on events, doing the setup, you know, working on films, editing, I've always got music in the background. So even though I thought I was going down different paths, it was always around music. And I guess getting into events, you know, running events and stuff was to be working around music, right? You know, to be there all the time in that experience, which, you know, it's unfortunately we don't have so much of right now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
sure.
I've definitely considered other paths. I'd love to. If I could go back to uni, I'd probably do something like journalism, because I'd love to, like, you know, certainly right now break, you know, investigative stories about music and uncover a lot of, you know, as we say, a lot of people don't know what we do. A lot of people don't see the process behind it. You know, the people practicing hard, playing music, or working hard, running events. You don't see that. You just see, you know, artists playing, you know, Glastonbury or whatever. And, you know, it's great that we have, you know, that top tier of music, and I think the UK has probably got the best music in the world. I mean, it's probably biased, but like, we've got great artists that come up through that underground, and, you know, look at grime, look at anything, you know, look at drill, look at, you know, the music that's come out of London. It's all come from the underground, and it's come upwards, and I think that's what we've got to focus on incubating. Really, we've got to grow the next scene, right?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see like how it develops in the future from now, because you know new genres come up all the time, and often things get like they go around in circles like fashion does. So like punk comes back, and you know D&B comes back, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see, like especially with the lockdown, what new genres come out of it and what new creative ideas people come up with. So yeah, I guess like back to the question at the start. Yeah. I guess like have you thought of doing any like very traditional jobs, like any sort of, you know, because quite often you find that people's parents will say go to uni to do this to get a job doing this, right? Because that's what they believe in. Have you ever had that kind of experience or influence?
Yeah, I you know, money is a stress. It's always been a stress for me. So, you know, having a job and not worrying about not having it, you know, I'll always worry. No, you could give me £1 million and I'd still worry about money. So, and it's also it's a mental health thing as well. Like I think, you know, for me, like when I'm working, and you know, not so much for the man, but like when I'm doing my own projects and I'm working, you know, that is positive for me. It's positive to wake up and go and do something like that. So I don't think, like, I would never aim towards, like, you know, as I say, like a traditional job. I'm always going to be someone that is going to want to like do their own creative process as a job, because that's what I love and that's what I get the most out of. And you know, in an ideal situation, you know, by the time I'm 30, who knows, maybe I'll be doing something full time where it's all sorts of things. It's events, it's music, it's film maybe, you know. I like to keep myself interested. I get distracted and bored very, very quickly. Like you probably, you know, sometimes I trail off for like, I think a lot, and I think that's best not sitting in a job where I can't express myself, but better doing my own thing or working with other people. So, you know, music is just that environment where it's just fun. You know, people express themselves, it's at the heart of it, and yeah, that's what I always want to do, really.
And so, like, say if you were to give someone advice, so they're into the scene that you're, you know, you're like an expert in, say.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
And what sort of advice would you give them in terms of like getting into the scene and going down the route that you have? Like if someone's just starting out, so they've just got a set of decks, for example.
Yeah. Well, that's a good starting point. You know, as a DJ, organising your music. You know, taking ownership over your music and arranging it, and knowing what you've got and expanding it. You know, that's 99% of the time, especially when I was mixing on digital. Like, you know, I was, you know, just doing playlists. I'm on the train. I'm got a set when I get back. I'm making a playlist. You know, I'm at home. I've got 100 different YouTube tabs open, and I'm like, you know, and I'm looking for music, and I'm digging. You know, I'm in the record store and I'm digging. You know, it's that process, and I think that's what's nice about like mixing on vinyl as well. Like, you know, you can go to a record shop and you can dig. Like I go to Idle Hands in Bristol. It's, you know, the best record shop we've got, and I love going in there and, you know, talking to the guys, talking to Chris, getting suggestions, or just going my own way, which I usually do through the bargain bins. You know, looking for stuff that people have maybe given up.
Yeah.
But it's that process, you know, and unless you love that process, I think a lot of people get the decks and like they want to go ham with it straight away. They want to like play a set, do this, do that. Take your time, because someone can be getting all the sets and like playing loads, and then, you know, in a couple of months they've run out of tunes, and who's going to play the sets then? You know, if you run out of tunes, that's the worst place you can be. It's like being bankrupt as a DJ, is losing that love for searching. So I'd say that is it, you know, and that kind of translates to everything, you know, working in events, you know, and working in music. you've just got to keep discovering, and that's what it is to me. It's a process of discovery, and from day one, I was making playlists on my iPod. I was organising my iTunes. I was making sure I had all the album covers. I was very technical about it. So I think if you've got that sort of mindset, you'll do quite well. It's not all about ability at the end of the day. I'd say that I guess that's that punk ethos. It's not about how well you play guitar. It's about how you play and the energy that comes through it.
Yeah, it's like the emotion. Like I've talked about this before, but it's the emotional side of music that helps people to connect to it, I think. Like, yeah, you could be technically the best guitar player ever, but if you can't write a good riff that no one can connect to or makes people move, then there's not really much substance to it. And I think a lot of that comes, I feel like, with your own love for music. Like when you listen to new music all the time, you have your own connection with it. You can know how to kind of create that magic with your own music. You kind of know, like, if I was listening to this as someone going through a record store trying to discover my own music, what would make it stand out? Like, what would draw me to it? And I think there's always just something else that stands out, something different. You listen to something new and you're like, oh wow, there was something in that. Sometimes you can't put your finger on it. Like, you hear a guitar riff and you're like, I don't know what it is about that, but there's something about it that sounds good. And it's just sometimes that simple. But yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I think anyone, if you're a musician, a DJ, surrounding yourself with as much music as you can is always going to put you in a good stead. And I think developing listening skills is like fundamental, being able to listen.
Yeah, definitely. And especially if you're like self-taught, like whether you're DJing, playing an instrument, having that ear for it. I even when I was playing bass, I wasn't really a fan of like sight reading or like, I can't read music. Well, you're a drummer. You're all about feel, and I think that's where I was as a bassist as well.
For sure.
Was I was always locked into the drums and always stood around a drummer listening to what they're playing. It's having that connection to the music right from the start, listening to what they're playing or listening to a tune or beat matching, when I'm mixing vinyl, I've got no guides to help me out, I've got no BPM or whatever. I've just got to remember like what that BPM was or how it sounded or how it felt. And I suppose it's easy for me for a lot of music I mix is 140, so you can kind of guess where it's going to be anyway, but it plays a big part into it, and it helps you get, I guess, like locked in, right? I know I'm going to play a good DJ set when I put the headphones on and I'm locked in, and I'm listening to what I'm playing and I'm enjoying it. Same feeling I used to get from playing in bands, or same feeling I get from being at a show and listening to the music and being connected with it. You can't always put your finger on it, can you? It's a special thing, right? It's a unique thing.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to go to a difficult area to talk about sometimes, but I want to talk a little bit about mental health and how music has helped you personally. And if you can sort of talk a little bit about your own experiences, I think that'd be really great for the viewers to hear.
Yeah, well, I'm genuinely pretty open about mental health, and I think it's important to be. Sometimes not everyone can be, which is important to recognise as well. But like, I've been through my own experiences with, depression, anxiety. I'm comfortable talking about it because I've learned better how to deal with it. Music has always been a big part of that, but also is a big cause of it, right? I think there was a study a couple of years ago, I can't remember the study, which was talking about some crazy figure of how many musicians struggle with anxiety or depression or mental health issues, and it's because we give everything for it, and that can be financially, it could be with your time, it can mean that you end up skint, you end up doing well for a little bit and then falling off. It is very difficult, and I think you've got to, I guess, try and align that positive well-being side of things to your music. It's a hard one because a lot of people make moody music, right? And a lot of people, there's a classic thing where people say they can't write when they're not happy. Yeah. Of course you can. Just put yourself in a different headspace, I guess. But like, if you're in that negative headspace a lot, you're gonna generally struggle to like. I've generally everyone's different. I'm not giving like blanket advice here. Everyone's different. Everyone has to find their way, but for me personally, it's been like that drive and that motivation often comes in short bursts unless I'm feeling good or unless I'm taking care of myself, eating well, relaxing, knowing when to switch off. Those are the key things for me. And I think especially just like that positive mindset of like for me, going to the gym helps massively right now. If you can get a cheap gym near you or a membership, or you work somewhere that can give you a free gym membership, I think stuff like that is really, really good. It's a really good way to like come out feeling good, even if you go straight back into feeling terrible or whatever. You've done something, and it's good to have something outside of music as well to keep you balanced, to keep you motivated. It could be another creative thing, but you want to be careful. You want to look after yourself. You're the most important thing. If you're not good, you can't be good to other people. You can't help other people. You can't live up to your expectations of yourself. And I think going back to what we were saying about listening to music, sometimes going back and listening to old records or finding something new is almost like a reset point for me, and I become more engaged with it. And I think sometimes you can kind of force that to happen rather than just letting it happen. And I've struggled with expectations a lot, especially this year. There's a lot of things I wanted to do that I haven't been able to do. Has it affected me mentally? Yeah, massively. Not being able to run events, I mean, it's affecting a lot of people, I know, but it's affecting me in terms of like I kind of had a really good run for a couple of years of always DJing and always doing stuff, and to lose that, it's hit my confidence a little bit, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, like I personally like go to the gym in the morning, and I think you build confidence from kind of doing the quick wins. So you have to know you can like trust yourself, and essentially if you put too high expectations on yourself and then you never hit your expectation ever, you're going to fall lower and lower. But if you kind of have little goals and then you achieve them and you celebrate that, you're constantly going to be building your own confidence with yourself. I think that's a really important part of it. And I think creative people often have very high expectations, and they struggle with that because most creative people I know are sort of perfectionists. Like, you want it to be just right. Like when you're writing a new song or doing a new mix, you want to get it like spot on. And sometimes it's very hard to achieve that, like, and then you don't want to get yourself into a rut about it, because I think you got to remember that music's never perfect. And as a creative, you're just trying to channel energy into something and create something, and sometimes people aren't going to like it, and you have to be okay with that. That's also hard, I think.
Yeah, prepare for criticism. Prepare the most for your own self-criticism.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
you're always your first critic, and I think that's something you've got to level as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It can be like a process of like aiming too high a lot of the time, thinking about the end result before working yourself through the process. And I think that's where I stumble a lot, and have stumbled a lot, is that expectation and trying to get everything right. Like, I don't know if I'm a perfectionist. I don't know. Sometimes I don't spend enough time on things. I don't struggle to let go of stuff.
Yeah, that's good.
I struggle to maintain doing all the different things that I do. I make myself too busy, I think.
I definitely struggle with that as well. I can relate.
Yeah, it's easy to. I mean, I like to be creative as much of the time as possible, and graphic design, making music, doing a bit of film stuff. Like, it's good to do stuff, but then you can easily become like really overwhelmed with the amount of stuff and the amount of responsibility. And in some ways, I am quite enjoying the break from running events for a little while, because certainly organising events it's a lot of skill, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of time out of your life, and it can be quite stressful, and then not always pay off. So having that break from that, I think that's the most full-on thing that anyone does in music, is like events. Running events, playing gigs, doing tours is the thing that's going to have the biggest impact. And if you spend all your time stressed and having too many expectations, you lose those moments, which are actually probably the pinnacle of it for all of us, really. You know, playing a good show, getting that positive reception from other people, and using that to help you grow and build your self-confidence yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'm sure everyone's rearing to go, getting back into things when we sort of come out of all this. So in terms of the future, I know with what's going on, it's quite difficult to say, but what are kind of your future plans and ambitions from here?
Well, as I said, I'm trying not to have too many expectations, but from here, I really wanted to like start a record label this year, and it's been something that's, I guess, kind of like a bucket list thing to do, and I think a natural progression from having been a DJ for quite a while and, you know, doing events. But that's the thing, I guess, I wanted to launch it maybe through doing events and always have events as a real part of it.
Yeah, sure.
So hopefully at some point next year, I mean, I'm scoping out how I'd even do it, talking to people, talking to artists. I'd like to get that going at some point next year. I think it'd be good. And I think it'd be good to, I guess, use the skills that I'm not using at the moment. You know, like you know, you're running a podcast that's bringing a community together, and, you know, having these conversations with about music and with musicians, and I think you're using maybe the skills that you wouldn't use all the time to do this, and I think that's really, you know, it's inspiring and really like a positive use of time, and that's what I think a record label could do, you know, bring through some new music and, you know, start the process that I'm often on the receiving end of. You know, I'd like to have a bit of control over it, and I think I'd get like the ultimate satisfaction out of, like, you know, releasing some records and doing that kind of thing, and, you know, doing all the creative stuff around it. And I feel like I could get, like, you know, I feel like I could get really involved in it. But we'll see. I mean, you know, the priority number one is just to stay calm, just to ride out the storm when it gets difficult, and just, as I say, like, keep the music up, keep producing, keep mixing, keep going and having a little dig for some records, trying not to spend all my money on records, and yeah, just finding the balance in whatever it is what it is at the moment. And, you know, I think reconnecting socially with people as well a lot more. That's my aim. But that's what I want. I want 2021 to be a social year, where I see people all the time, and there's not this longness about, like, distance and stuff. And,
for sure,
you know, we can all just hang out and have big parties again. I miss it.
So, like, in between that time, Alex, where can people find you online, you know, social media?
Most active on Instagram, which is at Ratti DJ, which is RATTI. Not really using much other than that at the moment, really.
Cool, and we'll put the links for that in the description. So I'm really excited for this, actually. So we've got an exclusive DJ set now. Can you talk to us a little bit about the set before you play? Yeah,
so I'm going to pick out, you know, some of my favourite releases over the last couple months. Most of it probably like 140 stuff, but, you know, we'll maybe throw some other bits in there as well. Bit of reggae, bit of jungle. Yeah, just try and mix, like, some good stuff for you to hear. I mean, if you don't know 140 music at the moment, maybe a good introduction for some people as to, like, you know, what's been going on and what they've been missing as well.
Cool. No, I'm excited to hear it. So yeah, let's go straight into that. Thanks for coming on the show today, Alex. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks for bringing me on.
Nice one. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching. Take care. See you next time.
He don't give a fuck and we call him the tax man. Yo, so welcome to London, fam. Poverty, we got that in abundance, fam. Some are homeless, some are reckless. You'll get fucked if you buck up on a London gang. But sterling, they run up on your London grants. Put work in and mash up all your London plans. You can't argue when we start charge you congestion. That's another London scam. Cold when it's critical. Nobody don't trust nobody. Welcome to London, yeah. That's how we function. That's how we function. Nobody don't trust nobody round here. What? Welcome to London. Flexing, but slowly we're suffering. All this name brand, you see man covered in. We go hard, but we know we're gonna look good. But the ego don't show when we're struggling. Cold, even though we got the teapot bubbling. Youngers on the roadside, they do the hustling. So the street crime's always epidemic, and you could find a real killer in the club shuffling. Yo, so welcome to London, fam. Black cabs, red buses, and the white van. Man, they got oysters, they not just seafood. So the boy them can follow and see you. 24 hours every day, my city don't sleep. You need peas in my city, cause it's not cheap. Top quality has never been a guarantee. We'll extort your friends and family. Cold when it's critical, cool but cynical. Maxed out, never minimal. That's how we function. Cold when it's critical, cool but cynical. Maxed out, never minimal. Welcome to London, yo. That's how we function. That's how we function. Nobody don't trust nobody. Welcome to London, yeah. That's how we function. That's how we function. Nobody don't trust nobody round here. What? Welcome to London.
I wanna ride, and I want my fucking. Come on. Sitting in the living room on the floor, hunger pain got me on some migraine shit, but I'ma maintain. Nigga got $2 or $3 to my name, and my homies in the same boat, going through the same thing, ready for a cake. Steady plot for the paper. We've been living in the dark since April on the campus. Gotta get a handle. My homie got a 25 automatic added to the camera. Nigga get the phone book, look up in the yellow page. Let me tell you how we finna get paid. We gon' order pizza when it's in the drive-up. We gon' stick the 25 up in the face. Let's ride, stepping outside like warriors into the notorious south side. One weapon to the four of us, hiding in the corridor till we see the dominoes call headlights. White boy in the wrong place at the right time. Soon as the car door open up your mind, we roll up quick and put the pistol to his nose. By the look on his face, he probably shitted in his clothes. You know what this is? It's a stick up. Give me the dough from your pickup. She ran into the wrong niggas. We running down the block hot with these pieces of boxes, so we split up and met that at the apartment.
Keep the fire blazing. Keep the fire. Keep the fire blazing.
I am baby, and the risk and money, and the sound, they do not say sound, with a lot of food, belly get full. Drink up some too strong like a bad book. And me with buzz up a taste, simple not me with pull. That's all we did, early in the morning. The whole world, the champ powerful. Jump on New York, happy full. But tell the whole world, the champ powerful. Don't sit down in England, happy full. And the body love. From them top, go straight to shoes down. From shoes down, go straight down a ground. Respect up it, do not do the mama. Think a little bit of robbery. Them boy, they put down something. Lock up them right and turn it to that boy. No matter who boy, no matter now. They better do it and they get to that. Sit up on the rhythm and the whole place that because she better do it and they get to that. Sit up on the rhythm and the whole place that because
Thank you.